This audiobook is rated PG-12A due to slightly explicit content. Take care. Any historical inaccuracies should just be accepted as being part of an alternate universe. Chapter 7. The Cherry Tree. From the harsh winter and the final fall of Legion, spring's heavenly showers came forth. As the seasons bloomed with time, an elapsing fellowship faded into a cherry tree, for friendship is finite when love's agriculture blossoms within. He entered her chamber upon golden light. "Greetings, my lady." "Greetings, Centurion," she said with scarlet ambience. "What brings you here?" Crimson asked. "I told you I'd return to your chambers." He smiled. "As promised," she laughed. "Come take rest with me, for it is much colder in the southern wing." 5th of January, 1071. Princess Naya lay in a dreamt misery. Purple was her room, her dress, and her aura, but black it remained, dark, shadeless, and emotionless. The ambience remained answerless, an ambient feeling of not belonging with such high castle walls, a feeling of one's head not fitting the golden round, a feeling of royalty not being her true dynasty. What was the root of her blood? She wondered of her true mother. Would she ever meet her, or had she already met her? Was she civilian, or truly one with royalty? Was her hair black like Naya's, or glow purple like her mind? Had she an epic poem, or was she the poet herself? A million questions of who her true mother really was kept her awake since her exit of the orphanage, yet only 1,000 answers remained. January 31st, 1071. A joyous feast. Candles alighting, the smiling guests sat upon the road wooden tables holding divine food and bubbling drinks. The chill atmosphere of a million conversations filled the evening room corner to corner. Then and there, the purple-haired poet entered, hostess Marzi. Behind her, Sergeant Centurion. She took her seat in the corner of the room, lighting a few extra candles. A few conversations began to silence, and only 100 remained. Centurion approached the table in the centre where Aaron sat between Crimson and Fleur. He nodded and smiled. It was time for something new to begin. Aaron tapped his cup with his spoon, silencing the remaining conversations.
"Listen up," he began. "The captain has something he'd like to say."
Aaron cleared the table, allowing Centurion to step up upon it. The table shook as he stood. All but Aaron and Marzi watched in confusion. Following deep breaths, Centurion began.
"There's something I was meaning to ask, and it won't be grounding me with pressure until I do."
He put his hand behind his back, holding another out toward Crimson, signaling her up. Slowly, but without hesitation, she did so, looking down upon the crowd in confusion.
"Crimson," Centurion continued, "I come upon this feast to bring forth something that could change the future."
He rustled his hand behind his back, failing to hide it from Crimson. The tone of the atmosphere, the tone in his voice, the ambience. Crimson knew exactly of what was to come.
"Crimson, Queen Crimson, would you do the honour of, or would I have the honour, would you make me, what was it you said, the happiest in the world?"
Centurion covered his face with his hand, looking to Aaron for advice. Aaron just smiled.
"Crimson, will you take my hand and—"
In that moment, Crimson knelt down on one knee and asked what would take all the pressure off of Centurion. "Will you marry me?" Centurion paused.
"Yes!"
he finally exclaimed, and the whole room shook with cheer and applause. Seed had been planted. February 19th, 1071. Silver bells and golden bouquets, scarlet aisle with kingdoms of crowds upon both sides. The afternoon sun shining through rainbow windows. Centurion, decked in a bright kilt, stood at the front with most of his peers. Then and there the grand doors opened, and Crimson entered, following Lola and Naya decking the aisle with purple petals. Her hair was styled in a wavy ponytail that hung before her purple veil. Her gown was purple too, resembling the stars. Hear ye, she began once the crowd silenced. We gather in this hall for the pleasure of this afternoon changes the course of the future. She stopped once she stood up upon the altar. And now a ceremony ending in the words I do and a newly crowned king began. And applause and tears of joy began to flow.
Oh, I just love happy endings,
Fleur sobbed into Centurion's arms. It isn't the end yet. It's merely the beginning of a new arc. Crimson smiled. She turned to Aaron, who began to sob. Are you crying too?
Course not, just sweating. My, it's terribly hot in here.
Aaron lied. Looking back at Centurion, he wasn't the only one who was sweating. March 29th, 1071. As April began to come forth, the rainy season began. The rain awoke Lola one stormy night. She lay wide awake in her pink room, brown by night. Thinking back on the thoughts that pounded in her mind, she began to cry.
Oh, Lola, what's the matter?
Fleur asked, running in at the sound of her tears.
Everyone outside hates me. They hate me for who I am. It's not fair,
Lola cried.
Who hates you?
Fleur asked, putting her arms around Lola.
Who?
Asked Fleur.
It's all in your head, Lola. If not, it's their problem, not yours.
Lola continued to cry. Shh.
Get some sleep. It's past your bedtime. Remember not to care what other people think, okay?
Fleur said, exiting the room as Lola began to rest. Fleur, come over here. Crimson signalled to Fleur from the end of the corridor. Fleur obeyed. Can I talk to you?
Of course.
Fleur smiled. Crimson hesitated for a second. The thing is, Aaron would overreact, Centurion would get overwhelmed, and you're the only one I can trust. Fleur looked at her in confusion.
Are you okay?
Yeah. Well, you see, I have a little... Crimson began, pointing to her stomach.
Crimson, are you pregnant?
Fleur exclaimed. Uh-huh. Crimson nodded in fear.
Oh, this is wonderful news!
Fleur exclaimed. No, it is not.
Oh, but it is! I'm going to have a lovely little boy or girl to play with.
Of course, but the thing is, I can't raise a child from birth, and that's it. Birth. The process scares me. Crimson sighed.
Oh, you'll be fine. Trust me. You've got a while to go anyway.
Fleur smiled. That's true, but in the meantime, can you keep this between you and me?
If that's what you want, but everyone will have to find out eventually.
And they will, eventually. Right now only a few medics know besides you. Crimson smiled.
I understand. Come to me if you need anything.